Hey, 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 Tony talking here. Welcome back in here today. We're going to do a follow up on the video I did most recently, and I'm going to today do a ranking video of probably my favorite band in the 80s, Prefab Sprout, and certainly my favorite writer, that Patty McAloon, who just wrote brilliant, brilliant stuff. And of the last video we did talked about some of the voicings and some of the arrangements and some of the unique things that were kind of smoothed off by Thomas Dolby in that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to count down this stuff. I want to show you a couple of things here in a minute before we do this, but let me give a short little history just to get people on the same page. Prefab Sprout, English rock band, County Durham. Uh, and Martin McAloon really were the foundation of the band. Martin, the bass player, Patty, the guitarist and composer, and really genius in the band. Wendy Smith joined shortly thereafter. She added a really nice touch to the sound. Had a very pure, straight, high voice that blended very well with Patty's, and really weaved their own little magic there in sort of a combination way. They really hit on a sound that had never been hit on before, not only musically and harmonically, but vocally and vocal arrangement wise. And they made some of the most elegant, beautiful music ever made. And I'll go over some of that as we count this down. But anyway, they as I understand, 9 of the albums reached the top 40 in the UK. They had the popular songs. The King of Rock and Roll actually was a big hit over in England, peaked at number 7. It was on MTV and stuff here in the U.S. But again, I'd heard that there was a time, I believe, I was working in Washington, D.C. at the time. And there was a period of time where there was a guy and I managed a store in Washington, D.C. on M Street named Penguin Feather Records in the 80s and the early 90s. And there was a gentleman, Rich Heineke, who worked for IMP, used to call us around to see how records were doing, because he would make the decision: do I book them at Lisner? Do I book them at a bigger place? What kind of draw do we have? What kind of buzz is it? And there would always be some kind of surprise. And of course, Georgetown was right over our shoulder too, so some of the smaller concerts could be booked there. But essentially, he did inquire at some point about Prefab Sprout, and I remember being very excited to him, but it didn't happen, obviously, and so. But anyway, the first name of the band before they started was the Dick Diver Band. And I don't know if Dick Diver was somebody that was a person or they meant diving for, you know what. Anyway. Prefab Sprout was the name that Patty made up. And his statement was all the bands had names like that. All the groups had names like that. That was his excuse for it. But anyway, they started off in February 1982 and released their first single. And just for a treat here today. And I do have something here. My number one record, believe it or not, I couldn't find it. It has to be out of place here, but it's funny as far as the albums go. But I have it a couple times over. Nevertheless, let me show you guys a couple things. First of all, very first single was put out on their own label, Candle Records. Right here it is in my hands. This is a pretty valuable record. As you can see on it, it says Candle Records here. Excellent song. You guys have heard this. Radio Love, of course, is the B-side. And then I have what happened when they signed to Kitchenware. With Kitchenware, they reissued this with a nice picture sleeve here that I have. All of these, by the way, were acquired at the legendary Yesterday and Today Records in Rockville, Maryland, with Skip Groff, basically one of the godfathers of DC punk and DC alternative music. You can hear Ian MacKaye and Henry Rollins sing praises to the skies. And by the way, I'd like to say, if anybody ever listens to this, I have his jukebox, and it's at my parents' house. I do not have the house that I grew up in. It's there, and it's not being used. I have no place to really get it or any place to have it. So if anybody is interested in something like that or be interested in purchasing it or interested in it in any way, let me know. Of course, you don't get the 45s in it. I've probably got the only jukebox who has Intro Prana from Trees on Cosmic Fire, Todd Rundgren on it, and Yoko Ono. Don't worry, don't on my jukebox, man. It was great. I would come home from work and dial it right up. But anyway, here's that I bought. I bought pretty much all the singles. Skip was one of the greatest single places. He'd go over to England, like I said many times. Maybe I didn't tell you this before, but he'd go over many times. a year and buy singles and come back and buy records. And this is evidently is one of the ones over here. This is Lions in My Own Garden, the original issue on kitchenware. It's just a black label. And then, of course, as I sang its praises to the heaven and shall always do, their greatest single of all, The Devil Always Has the Best Tunes. Here it is in my shaking hands. I love this record, man. So lyrically simple, like Ave Maria. People can't be honeybees always. Listen, I want to know some lyrics. There are some background vocals that Wendy sings on this, and I don't know what the words are. I will put a little coda here in this later, but I really need just one line, and I can't figure it out. I can't figure out what it is. I think she's singing about bees. But man, what a great song. And this is about songwriting. This is about the struggle of expressing yourself. That's why I like it so much, because I can hear the angst and frustration and the effort being put in. This guy got to where he was because he really cared and put in the work. I mean, this is something like this doesn't happen uh, magically. But nevertheless, let's get to the fun part, and we're going to count down the albums of Prefab Sprout. And I do not have the first one and the last one on this to have. So, Joe, if you could put it up right here. My number 10 is 2001's The Gunman. 2001, The Gunman record was so different. It was on Liberty Records. It was completely different. You've got Cowboy Dreams on there. You've got Cornfield Ablaze. You've got the song about the cat. It's just, there's something about that record. I don't hear Wendy in it. There's something about that tried another Americana style that just doesn't work for me. And I'd never liked it. And believe it or not, it's the only record that's not on vinyl. I have the CD, but I'm not going to, I refuse to hold up CDs. Anyway, unless they're super rare. I will go to number 9 now. And number 9 is one of the more recent records, one of the records that happened after Patty had pretty much, the band has pretty much ended. Even Martin has not been on the last few. They've all been more or less demos, or what Patty would have done demo, I guess, in his own studio wise over a period of time. But we've heard, throughout the years, he has all of these records done and all this music done. And I don't doubt it. I would love to hear it, because the quality of his stuff is always tip top. And so I would put, and this is a good record. This is a good record, but it's probably my least favorite of the new couple. And that's 2009, Let's Change the World with Music. I love Ride. Ride is beautiful. God Watch Over You is just would be on a greatest hits. I mean, it's just a gorgeous song. It's a knife to the gut. I mean, it's intense. You can hear his religious views coming forward, and you do hear in some of these newer ones. You can hear in some of this one especially, this record, some of his religious stuff comes through, and you hadn't heard that before. And I'd heard some of that in the interviews, etc. But good record. Music is a Princess is fantastic. Sweet gospel music is nice. I like Angel of Love. But there are a lot of these mid-tempo songs that are a little bit maudlin, that sometimes get a little bit for me. And I think the Gunman kind of drifted into that too sometimes. This kind of melancholy thing that is, I guess, when you're in the mood for it, is fine. But there's a little bit in too much of a measure for that. For me, it's just in too great a measure. Number 8. This isn't really a Prefab Sprout record. When I bought this on CD originally back in 2003, this was a Patty McAloon solo record with a white cover. And I have it somewhere sitting here on CD. But it's been re-released on vinyl. And it took everybody a million times to try to get a good copy of this, because when these came out, they were defective. There were all kind of problems with it. I went through about 5 before I finally got one that works. This record when I first heard this record, this record penetrates you on a different way. Normally Patty hits you with these short vignettes, these 3-4 minute stabs to the heart in different ways and in beautiful, succinct way. This is more of a long piece, and the beauty of the strings, but the melancholy when you hear the poor person talking on the radio and all this is. And when they're talking about megahertz, they're talking about hertz. Hertz, hertz, pain. And this is a hard one to take. I mean, this record is, I imagine it would be cathartic and would be healing for people, but it is really a soul uprooting record, really a record that operates on a completely different level than his art ever had before. I think it's fantastic. I love it. I think the orchestration's great, but it's completely different. So it's very hard to judge in the realm of the other Prefab Sprout catalog. Kind of lands outside. It's kind of a different thing. It's a long form piece that's more of a. And if you haven't heard it, you've never heard I Trawl the megahertz. Anybody watching this should go check it out. It's really something unique. I think you would really enjoy the experience. Now we go to the other recent one here from 2013, Crimson Red. I think I said a different name. I think I said Scarlet Red or something on this. But this is the one with List of Impossible Things, Best Jewel Thief in the World, which is, I think, is a fantastic song. I don't know if you've seen the video, but it's there's a video on YouTube. It's super great. Devil Came a Callin's great. Billy's really, really special, really nice. Songs of Danny Galway. That, I think, is a tribute to Jimmy Webb, I think. I think it is. I think it's been purported to be that. The Old Magician's really nice. But again, there's some of this record is, again, falls into some of this later stuff. What the later stuff do is a little more of a languid, longer holding chords, longer tones held, more of a melancholic feel. And I think to me, that's the negative parts of it to me. I mean, that's not my favorite. That's not my favorite Patty. I like it, but there's a level to which I like some things versus others. But nevertheless, everybody does. Now we go to number 6, and this was a kind of a controversial record at the time. I remember getting this and being perplexed because it came out very close to Langley Park, and I was thinking, what in the hell? Where did this come from? This was an import. I remember coming into my record store and I saw this, and I'm like, what is protest songs? Well, you found out that protest songs was what happened between Steve McQueen and Langley Park. It happened in there. It was a record that was recorded. So although it was released in '89, you call it a 1989 record. It actually falls somewhere between 85 and 88, pretty much 86, 87. And this is packed full of great stuff. The only drawback is it was not given the grand, lush production and the doctoring up that Thomas Dolby did to the other records. And hence they sound like they went in the studio, recorded the tracks, never really, it sounds like a record that was never really fully flushed out. There's definitely a restrictiveness of texture, of sound and textures on this record. It sounds more like a band. It sounds more like a band playing. And you've got, I think you had Neil and the Conti in the band by then, so you had a pretty nimble unit with him and Martin playing together, and they seem very tight on this. World Awake is great. Life of Surprise is great. That's on the greatest hits, as you know. I love Horse Chimes. Wicked Things is, I love Wicked Things. People like Dublin too. Dublin to me, not, I guess if I was English or Irish, it may, I've never been to Dublin, so maybe that would be it. Tiffany's I like. Diana's good. And I like all the versions of Diana. I like the slow one. I like the fast one on the single too, man. Looking for a star, looking for a star. Da-da-da-da-da-da. That's great. It's fantastic. If we don't find it here, if we don't find it now, what are we going to say? What are we going to say? I love it, man. That's just super. Beautiful. It's a shame it's tied up in Diana. You kind of wish it was detached from that. So I think people have an aversion to something because of the subject matter. But what a great one. Talking Scarlet is beautiful between Wendy and Patty. The vocal on this. Carry no bright torches for me. It's fantastic. Pearly Gates Till the Cows Come Home. Perfect wind down. This is really an underrated record. We're getting into 4+ star territory here. All great. Now here may come a surprise to you, man. Number 5, 1997, Andromeda Heights. This record has been maligned by a lot of people because of the even more restrictiveness of the sound, the fact that it's electronic, the fact that it sounds not like a band. It's heading more towards where things ended up. But the songs on this, the vocals, the arrangements on this, there's not, to me, this is one of the most consistent records ever. And it's funny that people always think electric guitars is one of their favorite songs. Like, to me, it's really not. I would probably say, as I look through this, I would say the only song I like probably about equal to that or less is maybe Steal Your Thunder. Both of those two, the openers on both sides, to me, it's interesting because they're usually the strongest and what people think is the strongest song, and they're the ones that I tend to like the least on here. The whole first side after that, Prisoner Past, Mystery of Love, Likes of Miracle, Anne Marie, whoever you are. I know I've talked about the melancholy and the maudlin, but these quality of these songs are as good as any record that this guy made. These are great songs, and if you were put off by the sound of this record, I would have you check it again. I think it deserves a higher place, and I remember it when it came out. I was bowled over. Avenue of Stars, Swans. Yes, it's melancholy, but it's the beauty of the chord changes and the orchestration with the little plucking little bells and such. It's just beautiful. Weightless. I feel like Eureka Goggin. Oh, jeez, fabulous. And then of course Andromeda Heights, and it's just very special, man. Came at a special time, and it hit me. It hit me right. So 1997, number 5. That now we're getting into the great stuff, which people can pretty much agree. And here comes 1988's Langley Park to Memphis. Wow. Everything from the start. You look at this, the king of rock and roll, probably the least for me. Cars and Girls too. I remember that. Fantastic. Enchanted. I love. But there are a couple ballads on here that to me are off the chart. And with the Stevie Wonder harmonica on Nightingales, superb. Who are we? What we got? It's otherworldly, man. I mean, I don't care what you do, man. I don't care where you are. You can't put that down. That is absolute beauty. And you might not be mature enough or in the right place to handle it. But Nightingales, Knock on Wood, Nancy Let Your Hair Down, and most of all, the Venus of the Soup Kitchen. Wow. What a different plane this guy was working on then. And look at the boyish face and the boyish thing, and you wonder the combination of how could a guy come up with something like this at this age? I mean, the maturity and the beauty. I mean, he had to have done work. This is, folks, if you're looking for the best music of the 1980s, this is where you're going to find a lot of it. And a lot of people have an aversion to maybe the sound or the voice. I don't know what it is, but I've yet to really find somebody who I really turned on to this that wasn't convinced. Next, we get to an earth-shaking record for me, Jordan. I come back, and I've got the original. It should be a double record. It's so long. But once again, working from the soul. I'll never forget. I'll never forget. I was in the record store with a guy named Tim, who was a guy that had come from Florida, I think, and was working there, and having a hard time working at the store. And we had this thing, and the Ice Maiden came on, and we played it in the song. I'll never forget him. He turns back. He's getting ready to go back to the back, and he turns back and goes, "We're talking flame. We're talking fire." I knew I'd scored then. I turned people onto this, looking for Atlantis, Wild Horses, Machine Gun Bees. We Let the Stars Go. To me is really, really, really special. I mean, it's everybody has their girl that they had when they were young, and their love, and the reflection on is something everybody can relate to. Carnival 2000, nice song. Jordan, The Comeback, Jesse James, Moondog. But I think Ice Maiden again is probably one of the greats, one of the most overlooked song probably there. Paris Smith, good. All Boys Believe Anything is fantastic too with Wendy's voice. My God, that's gorgeous. One of the Broken too. That's there you go, man. I mean, the depth of some of these ballads are just And it's funny that I was complaining and using the descriptions that I did prior. But this is a different kind. Scarlet Nights to Doo-Wop in Harlem. One of the Broken, Michael, man. Yeah, Jordan, The Comeback. Another production by Thomas Dolby. And Thomas Dolby did a few in a row there, and didn't have anything to do with protest songs, which was in between that, which is probably why it wasn't fleshed out and finished. But yeah, fantastic for number 3. Number 2, we just did I did a video on, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, of course. I'm going to put Swoon, and you're like, it's not number 1? That must mean, yes, that's right. That must mean. I know I did a video that said what was lost before Steve McQueen and what was lost before Two Wheels Good. But it doesn't mean that they didn't reach the peak that was probably the most pleasing and the best entry point. It's impossible to deny that Swoon is far more obtuse and far more probably difficult to get the average person in than Two Wheels Good was. I mean, you've got Johnny, you've got When Love Breaks Down on the top one, and so let's go ahead and do it. Number 1, Joe, put it right here. I can't find my regular copy of Two Wheels Good and Steve McQueen, but as a substitute, I'll give you a glance at this one. This is the one that they put out later, which was an acoustic version of some of the songs. But Goodbye, Lucille. Appetite, of course, was a huge song. Desire As, When Love Breaks Down, Fair and Young. You know, I often wondered with Fair and Young, something I wondered about Fair and Young. Fair and Young kind of has that gallop beat to it. And I wondered if they got that from The Fall or The Fall got that, because those songs were about the same time. And The Fall had a song out there when Bricks was in the band that had that gallop beat to it when they had the 2-drummer thing going. And I just wondered, maybe somebody heard the other, because they're very similar beats. I mean, the songs are completely different, and the way they're laid down, maybe it was just some kind of coincidence. But anyway, you've got Blueberry Pies, moving the river. That's number 1. Number 1 is going to certainly be Two Wheels Good and Steve McQueen, which is the Thomas Dolby masterpiece. And I think most critics would agree that that's number 1. But like I told you before on the last video, that doesn't mean that it's the most important. I think the source and the arrangements of where all this beautiful harmonic C came from, which is revealed in Swoon and those early singles, is probably more important. But it would be foolish of me to say, in light of the achievements of Two Wheels Good, for which probably pays for most stuff that most things that Patty has now, if it's still generating, it should be. But it certainly was the work of art and probably the most appreciated, and generally for most of the critics thought of as the top one. So yes, they're a top band. I love Prefab Sprout. Please let me know what your thoughts are with this, because I've looked around. I've not seen any of these online. It's probably there. Haven't seen it. If you look hard enough, you can find the obscure ones like us out here. But again, let me know what you think, and remember to subscribe and to follow and all that other good stuff. And I will see you guys next time with something new and fun. See you.